Welcome back. We are on day 18 of our New Year Healthy Habits series. We're still in week 3, so we're looking at evidence-based medicine, and today we're going to be looking at stress management as a pillar of lifestyle medicine. So let's get started. The article that we're looking at today is titled Yoga, Meditation, and Mind-Body Health, Increased BDNF, Cortisol Awakening Response, and Altered Inflammatory Marker Expression after a 3-month yoga and meditation retreat. So the population in this study are adults participating in a 3-month yoga and meditation retreat. There's 26 subjects, and there's 13 males and 13 females. The intervention that the people in the study are going to face is participation in a structured yoga and meditation program over the course of the retreat. The comparison levels are pre-retreat measurements or baseline levels of salivary cortisol, which is stress-mediated, BDNF, which is a marker of brain functioning and neuroplasticity, and inflammatory markers. The outcome are going to be the changes in salivary cortisol levels, BDNF levels, and inflammatory biomarkers pre-retreat and post-retreat. So let's look at some of the results and figures. If we look at the table at the top, it's titled Psychometric Pre- and Post-Retreat. So the BSI scales here, they're all surveys that participants receive. Higher scores indicate kind of higher levels of dysfunction or higher levels of anxiety, depression, and pain. So we can see over the course of the retreat, pre-values and post-values for these BSI-related categories greatly decreased, and they're all reflected by p-values less than 0.05. So anything less than 0.05 we consider to be statistically significant in the sense that it would not happen just due to chance alone. So each individual participating in this study found that they were experiencing lower levels of stress, anxiety, depression after the retreat, which is very interesting. The next marker was the mindfulness scale. So mindfulness scale actually increased over the course of the retreat, also reflective of a statistically significant p-value on the right-hand side there. The last one is telogen absorption. So telogen absorption is actually interesting. It's really a measure of a person's tendency to be able to be absorbed in experiences like daydreaming, fantasy, and deep engagement and thought. So this actually was not statistically significant. There was no statistically significant increase in this telogen absorption factor. The second table, labeled table number 3, biomarkers pre- and post-retreat, we'll look at the first row, which is BMI. BMI decreased from 22.1 to 21.2 and was actually found to be statistically significant. So over the course of this 3-month retreat, it was found that individuals basically lost weight. BDNF, brain kind of function marker, actually really increased kind of greatly. So from 2,513 average to 7,039 average, really showing that the effects of yoga, meditation really were positively reflective in this value. Next, we'll look at some of these inflammatory markers. So IFN gamma, TNF alpha, IL-1 beta, IL-6, IL-8, IL-10 are all pro-inflammatory, and then IL-12 is actually an anti-inflammatory marker. But interestingly, we can see these pro-inflammatory markers actually tended to increase over the course of the retreat. So kind of the prediction or the hypothesis was that these values would decrease, but it was actually found that each of these did increase. The only one that didn't have much of statistical significance or much change was IL-12. So kind of some theories or some reasons why maybe these all increased as opposed to decrease would be that individuals during the retreat were engaged in physical activity, and physical activity in and of itself is considered a stress state. So these inflammatory mediators can actually be upregulated during times of physical activity. So looking at the results, basically there was significant decreases in self-reported anxiety and depression. So that's kind of the biggest finding. There's also increased mindfulness scores as well. In terms of biological changes, the BDNF levels had a significant 3-fold increase, which we saw on the previous page. So that's really kind of the biggest biological marker we can see. For cortisol awakening response, there was an increase in this, indicating kind of improved adrenocortical activity. So your adrenal glands are responsible for producing cortisol, but also kind of responsible for mediating your stress response. So these people actually showed an improvement in their mediation of their stress response. And then, interestingly, the inflammatory markers, we didn't see the results that we had expected. So kind of an interesting thought there. Maybe further investigation needs to be done. So some of the limitations of this study was the lack of control group. So every individual that participated in this study went through the kind of the process of the intervention. So they went through the yoga and mindfulness course. They did not, there was no group that did not go through this course studied in this paper. For small sample size, there was only 38 participants, so kind of not really big enough to generalize to a broader population. Also, all of these participants were already enrolled in a mindfulness retreat, so kind of baseline, these individuals are not representative of the overall global population. Short duration to follow up, so it only assessed the changes in these individuals immediately after the retreat, so hard to kind of gauge the idea of long-term effects of yoga and meditation. Variability in individual experience, so there may have been prior experience with yoga or meditation, there may have been no prior experience, that was not accounted for in this study. And then potential confounding factors, of course, other lifestyle factors such as diet and physical activity during this retreat may have contributed to the observed changes. Specifically, I'm thinking like the BMI factor in this. A wellness retreat, I'm sure, tends to have pretty significant effects on weight and BMI. So again, a super interesting article. I hope you enjoyed. We will come back tomorrow with an article that talks about risky substances, specifically nicotine and secondhand smoke exposure. See you tomorrow.